This is Creepy and Geeky. Welcome. I'm your host, Robert, and today's guest is Kevin Uhrich. Kevin is a contributor at Film Cred and Neon Splatter and the host of the Video Confidential podcast. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Today we are continuing my series on Kevin Smith's movies, and today's episode is about Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, two of the more wacky and that's saying a lot for Kevin Smith, but two of the more wacky contributions, very self-referential, very meta, very, very, very fan focused in a lot of ways too. So let's go ahead and start with Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
All right, sounds good.
So what do you think of the movies, this movie overall?
Honestly, probably I would say this is I was gonna say probably it's not like the high watermark for me as far as Kevin Smith movies go, but I would say it's probably one of the ones I've seen the most between this, Clerks 2, and Mallrats. I think it's like a three-way tie between movies that I've seen. I saw Clerks 2 3 times in the theater with my best friend because we were just like so obsessed with it. But Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is like, I saw that, my cousin took me to see that in the movies, and afterwards my sister got it for me on DVD, and I just like watched it like pretty much on a consistent loop. I watched it with the commentaries and the special features and everything. So it's one that it holds a special place in my heart.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think that for me, that it was the kind of the culmination of the View-esque universe up until that point, and it was really supposed to be the end of the View-esque universe. And so like definitely it was because it brought everybody from the previous movies together and kind of brought a lot of storylines, not necessarily concluded them, but just kind of revisited a few things and everything. I definitely watched it a lot. It was definitely a heavy rotation, along with Mallrats as well, because Mallrats wasn't my first, but Mallrats was one of my favorites for sure.
Oh yeah, well, Mallrats was my first. My brother rented it, and I just happened to walk in when he was watching, and I'm like, this seems stupid but funny, so I'll watch it.
Yeah. But yeah, and speaking of stupid, then we get to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and that's just whole levels of stupid. But it's stupid in a way that it just works well. I don't know what it is about Kevin Smith's movies. His largely, I find that, and especially revisiting them again, and it's been a few years since I've seen a lot of them, that and they always had this aspect to them that not only are they funny, they're crass in a lot of ways with their humor, but they also hold a lot of heart to them. Yes. And he balances that very well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So, it's sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, it's kind of it's the best way to put it, I think, is like, it's dumb humor, but it's like intellectual dumb humor. It's right. like the characters have a very advanced vocabulary. It's like just going off on tangents and things like that, but they all are very like well versed in what they know. So it's
right.
They're all smart in their own ways.
Except for Jay and Silent Bob.
Well, Silent Bob is smart. Jay is
yeah, that's less. True. Silent Bob is smart. Although I don't know, I kind of question his smartness, hanging around Jay so much and following his lead.
It's all the weed. That was it.
True. I do think that's funny though. That is an aspect of his films that are interesting though too, because weed plays a very heavy role in especially in the lives of Jay and Silent Bob themselves. But it wasn't until I believe around the movie Cop Out that that Kevin Smith himself finally embraced weed, and started smoking regularly and became a huge proponent of it at that point. So I find that interesting that he had created these stoner characters without, and I'm sure he did some weed before then, but just hadn't embraced it as hard as he did later.
Yeah,
so
I think
I do find that it was a funny aspect.
Yeah, because I remember it being in the I think it was one of the Evening with Kevin Smith movies where he talks about like going back to smoking weed, and he's just like, yeah, I mean, they gave me this big batch of weed. I've probably smoked about as much as, I don't know, all of you people, maybe once. And it's like, and then it was like, you could see the tide shift after that, where he's like, oh, he smoked a lot of weed now.
Yeah. Especially if you listen to his podcast around the time period, because there was a he was doing his podcast, and then weed popped in, and then his podcast changed, not in a bad way, but it became a very heavy focus of it at times. And so it's been definitely an interesting journey watching him as a filmmaker, and then transition his career into a celebrity of his own, in a way that he's more famous for being Kevin Smith now than even for being his movies in a way. So it's just, he goes out and does all those appearances and stuff, and that's largely how he sells himself. And and you can see that because his output as a filmmaker has dwindled since that part, mostly and in part because just his opportunities have also kind of dwindled.
Yeah,
which always fascinated me. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a good point that it's kind of like Kevin Smith is his own brand now. It's like,
right.
I mean, and that's the whole thing. He's got, I think it's the Kevin Smith Club or whatever for the podcast, where it's like, oh, you pay this membership fee and you get these podcasts that you're, behind the paywall and things like that. And it's like, it's a brand, but it pays off because he's got a fan base that loves to do it. I mean, I've been to, I went to see when he did the theatrical run of the Jay and Silent Bob Super Groovy cartoon movie. My friend and I went to go see it. And oddly enough, I wound up on the podcast of Jay and Silent Bob Get Old because I did a Q&A. Oh, I asked one question to Jay, and it was like one of those weird, I was outside myself. Like I could see myself asking the question. I'm like, I'm asking Jason Mewes a question right now. And I'm staring almost directly at Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes. These two guys I've grown up with my whole life. I'm like, where am I right now?
That's awesome. I got to see him. I got to see him once also. No, go ahead, finish up.
Oh no, it's kind of just like, and that was a fully packed theater of people just to see Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes doing a Q&A. So the two of them are just like, and Kevin Smith primarily is his own, he's his own person now. He's like, oh, I'm a company in and of myself.
Right. Yeah, no, I got to see him a couple of years ago. It was like the year before his heart attack. And so I got to see him. My son and I went to one of his shows, and it was great. And actually I had a friend around at the same time, somebody that I knew and I was friendly with. Him and his girlfriend actually got married by Kevin Smith on stage at that show. So it was pretty funny. And he was telling me beforehand that he had to do a whole bunch of stuff before it happened to get all the logistics for that to work out. And so he'd worked it all out. And then somebody in the audience, some other couple in the audience, asked to get married also. And so then it became this weird joint wedding, and it kind of ruined it for my friend, because it was just he had to do all this hoop jumping through to get this to work out. And then these people just got it done with no problem right then and there. It was just oh, that sucks. But it was great, in a way. It was fun to see it, but it was kind of sucked for my friend.
Right. Yeah. That's just the whole.
But it was a great show.
Problem. Yeah.
Yeah. But going back to Jane Silent Bob Strike Back, this what was this? 2001, I believe. Yeah, 2001.
I think it was one because I was a freshman in high school.
Oh, good Lord! I'm always the old person in all of these.
I try not to be too like throw the young person card out there, but sometimes it ends up happening.
Yeah, let's see. 2001. My son was 4, and my daughter was just she was baking in the oven at the time. Oh. So yeah, I'm pretty damn old. So
only as old as you feel.
Yeah, which right now I feel pretty old. But no, but the movie, I remember seeing it in the theater vaguely, but definitely once it came out to not Blu-ray, DVD, I definitely got a copy and was just I wore that thing out because it's a fun movie. It's a road trip, and it's a stoner buddy road trip movie, and those are always fun.
Yeah.
If you get the right combo of stoners, like it's definitely not a niche I love. But if you get the right combo of them, then it's fun.
If you get a Cheech and Chong or
Cheech and Chong, or Bill and Ted, even though Bill and Ted aren't really stoners, they kind of fall into that category. Yeah, quote unquote. You never see them doing anything.
Yeah.
But
it's always afterwards. That's what it is.
Right. It's after the adventures that they they wake and bake.
Man, we totally did that, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. But yeah, no, this one's fun. So many great cameos. So many it's amazing who they got. I mean, obviously, they get all the Uhrich universe alumni. Ben Affleck, Jason Lee, Matt Damon,
Chris Rock,
just everybody. And then they add in, you get the weird cameos by Wes Craven and Gus Van Sant, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill. Just so many people he was able to pull into his universe, and it's so fun.
Yeah. And I think with obviously with the Wes Craven and the Gus Van Sant, it's like, probably Matt and Ben asked Gus to be involved.
Oh yeah.
The Miramax of it all was probably why Wes Craven was like, yeah, I'll be on board, and you guys can hop into Scream 3. Like we'll just have. Well,
they had actually done Scream 3 the year before, so I think it was a little.
That's right.
Little payback thing like that. Yeah. So
they're
all
having a good time.
Oh yeah. Well, and to me, Scream 3 is a favorite of mine of the franchise. I know a lot of people don't like it, but Scream 3 is always a favorite for me. And because it's sillier, it's more fun in a way. And putting that Jay and Silent Bob cameo in there, it's stupid, but it's that little fun nod to that era of Dimension films. Yes, it's got a taint on it now because of the Weinsteins, but beyond that, it was a great time of genre filmmaking, and so it was nice to have that little crossover, especially being a very odd crossover as it was. Like, why are Jay and Silent Bob in a Scream movie? Because they.
So is Scream in the Uhrich universe? I guess. Right? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it works for me.
Why is there a Clerks poster in Scream 1? Wait, this is all in the universe folds in on itself.
Miramax. Yeah, exactly.
That was the original MCU. It was the Miramax universe.
Yeah. Oh, I've mentioned this too during my Quentin Tarantino series, that I love a good connected universe, and that's what appeals to me about especially about something like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, is that you're seeing all these bits and pieces come together in a movie that they made references here and there, and of course Jay and Silent Bob pop up in all of them, but until that point it hadn't been as connected. In a lot of ways, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is the Avengers movie of the Uhrich universe. It collects all together into one fun adventure,
and it makes sense, especially if it's going to be like the last movie as originally planned. It's going to be the last movie in this universe. Then you bring everybody. Why not? We're all going to have fun. We're going to bring Banky and Brody. and Holden
Right.
and Ben Affleck is.
No, it's good. It's great. Like that's what I love about it too, is that you do get the people that play that double duty and are just having fun with it. Especially Ben Affleck, you know.
Oh yeah. The frosted tips and that's probably my favorite joke one of my favorite jokes in this movie is just like, think about the paycheck. Just like the two, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, are just the two, like they are their Hollywood, gossip personas that people think.
Right.
And then Gus
Ben
Van Sant
Affleck has a whole code about removing dead hookers. Oh man, Gus Van Sant over there counting his huge dollars for doing a hit movie and stuff.
Just for Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
That's not my own Private Idaho money, Gus. I love that movie, but
yeah,
not the money maker like it is.
No, not at all. Yeah. So I love that's a good part of what I love about it, is that everybody, for the most part, everybody has come back in these little small bits. Everybody at that point, Kevin Smith had already made his name as that quirky, fun, independent filmmaker that people enjoyed coming and working on his projects for. I mean, he was getting pretty good names for all of his movies. Post Clerks. Clerks did so well to get his name out there that people were definitely coming. Whenever he knocked on their door, they were like, sure.
When you get courted by, you make your first independent movie and then your second movie is being courted by Universal, it's like, I mean, you're gonna kind of stand back and be like, you know what, this guy, maybe he's onto something. And then, I mean, Chasing Amy, he goes back indie and he just wins like all these Independent Spirit Awards and things like that. And
and
then Dogma, it's like
Dogma. I mean, it's a crazy movie, but I mean, I think it works really well. And, and that one was kind of like, in a way, it was the precursor, because it's definitely a Jay and Silent Bob adventure. And you're definitely pulling in, some of these former people and putting some new people into it. And, it definitely, and it's a road trip in a way. And so you get this, it's definitely a precursor to the more silly, and not to say that Dogma isn't silly in a lot of ways itself, but Jay and Silent Bob, pulls in, a lot more of that ultra silly stuff. And then, we get people like Will Ferrell, like before he really he's still on SNL at that point, and he's starting to make that name for himself as a comedian, but he's not the Will Ferrell we know now.
Right.
Who's like a megastar.
Because it's 2 to 3 years before Old School even is coming out, somewhere around there. And like, that's the movie that kind of launches him as movie star Will Ferrell. And then Anchorman's not too long after, and Talladega, like he just keeps building from there. But yeah, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, it's like you're seeing him kind of hone the tools that would become the Will Ferrell we know, where he's just like, I'll get a little loud here, get a little flail here and there. I'll throw this around. I'll crash my moped into some burnt wreckage.
Yeah. And of course we've got the group of diamond heisters.
Yes.
Missy, Sissy, Chrissy, and Justice.
Yep.
I think this is
the rhyme scheme.
Yeah. I think this is the first movie we also get his wife, Jennifer Schwalbach, in a movie.
Yep, I think this is the beginning of their working relationship. So because I think,
and
oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, she doesn't do a bad job.
No, yeah, she's doing good work. Like she's doesn't have a huge role, but she's having fun with it. And then it sets up the bigger role that she gets in Clerks 2, and I guess Jersey Girl. She's not in it super long, but she's in there.
Yeah. I just watched that, and now I'm trying to remember where she was at in that.
she's at the beginning when when he's doing the press conference for Will Smith, and he's like got
Okay,
the
yeah,
baby, and
yeah,
he pours the, he's like,
yeah.
he's like, oh, well, you pour the powder and you do this, and it's like, that's all
Right,
I really
right,
remember of that movie. That and Will Smith cameoing, like that's about. Oh, and
right.
Sweeney Todd. That's yeah.
Yes,
Those
yeah.
three important things from Jersey.
Oh man, yeah, but yeah. So that it's obviously it's one of those things, and I was talking to another person about her being in the movies, and I think that he's done in my personal opinion, I think he's done a much better job with putting his wife into movies than Rob Zombie has.
Yes.
I, I'm not necessarily a Rob Zombie fan of his movies. His movies are all right. They're just not really my like. I love horror movies, obviously, but
Yeah.
his genre of movies just don't tend to work as well for me. They're okay, but
Yeah. They're
they're not. They're
not your
just not my
style,
avenue.
just kind of.
Yeah, and Sharon Moon Zombie is not a bad actress at all. Like
No.
I don't think she's a bad actress. I do think that I think he should pull her back a little bit more. Maybe make her not the star of everything.
Yeah.
But
Which I think worked in House of Thousand Corpses. It worked because she's part of a bigger ensemble, and they were focusing on like, oh, this is a weird part, and this is a weird part,
right.
And then Devil's Rejects, it kind of amps that up, and it's like, all right, we have our three leads, and it's like, okay. And then it kind of like when it worked, I think he worked best with her in Halloween when it was like she's there and then she's gone, and then the second half is just all about adult Michael Myers, basically the whole remake of the first Halloween. And then Halloween 2, it's like, oh, she came back. Okay.
She's just the ghost with the horse.
Yeah, her best lead, I would say, is Lords of Salem. And then it's downhill.
Yeah.
Like 31, I'm not a fan of 31. I don't like it. It's kind of blah to me.
I haven't seen that one or Lords of Salem yet.
Lords of Salem is cool. It's different. It's a very different, like, it's more, I don't want to say cerebral because that sounds too like hoity-toity, like I'm making it sound like it's really like, oh, you have to see it because it's so, no, it's just like, it's not what you would expect from Rob Zombie in terms of like,
it looks interesting.
Style.
I watched the trailer for it recently.
Yeah, it's a very, very cool movie. 31 is just him kind of going back to the well of House of a Thousand Corpses, but even more extreme. And I'm just not sure about this Monsters movie.
I'm not sure. Like I get what he's going for. He's going for that throwback silly 60s vibe with it and everything, but not sure if that's going to really work so much in the 2020s.
Yeah, it's iffy. I mean, I'll give it a shot. I'll probably rent it and see.
I'll give it a look. Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm sorry. I love the Monsters too much to be like, yeah, that's.
And
I know he's a fan.
Yeah. But yeah,
Rob,
I think
listening.
I doubt it. But going back to Jane, Silent Bob and the Girls, I think that it's a good group. Elijah Dushku, Ali Larter, and Shannon Elizabeth all do a really good job in it. It's a fun group dynamic. They're fun to play off of with Jay and Silent Bob as well.
Yeah, with Ali Larter especially, just being like the tough one who pulls out the knife immediately and is just like ready to kill him no matter what. And it's like, and Sean William Scott also, speaking of stars on the rise, he's fresh off American Pie. And American Pie 2 is just around the corner too, I think, or had just come out, but he's the big star. Shannon Elizabeth's big, like Eliza Dushku, she's got Buffy. Ali Larter's got
she just come off of Final Destination. Yeah.
So she's got those. Yeah. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna really, I'm gonna work my budget as much as possible and get young up and comers and cool actors that I think will be great in this movie. And and the studio's like, go for it, Kevin.
Here, have some money. We'll do all right. And I think this movie did pretty well, like financially. I think it was one of the bigger hits for him. I mean, that's not saying much since his movies don't make a lot, but
this might be around one of his biggest hits. I mean, it was Yeah, I feel like this was probably the top. Clerks was not. Clerks 2 wasn't as big. It was kind of like a downslope for a while, and now he's doing the festival, or more like not festivals, but more
Road
like
shows.
private screenings, road shows, things like that. So they're making more money that way, which is helpful, in its
Yeah.
own way. But yeah,
Yeah, I think he sees more return on that rather than distributing it through somebody else. He just, goes to each little theater, and whatever they make, they get that bigger cut of it. So
yeah, and plus, he's also turning it into, going back to the old school model of like, yeah, we're traveling the road, we're traveling state to
yeah,
state, country to country, whatever, and we're making it, we're showing a movie, and then we're having a show afterwards, and we're doing,
right.
having fun with it, selling merchandise. He's,
Yeah,
like I said, it's the
it's
Kevin Smith
great.
brand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's interesting too because going into Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, since that point, he's gone back to the well of sorts and going back to the Viewisk universe, um, in a way that he hasn't in a long time, because he got on the horror path in a way, with Red State Tusk and Yoga Hosers, which arguably Yoga Hosers is more comedy at that point than
Right.
anything.
I
But
think
going
he
back to the
described it.
Viewisk universe
Yeah.
for the first time since Clerks 2, and now we're getting a Clerks 3 that's on the roadshow circuit. So
Yeah.
it's interesting and I know he's been trying to make a Mallrats 2 happen, and
I remember that's been like one of the longest gestating things. That in Clerks 3 and Mallrats 2 were like the biggest. And I know
right.
Mallrats 2 was supposed to be turned into a TV show, and then that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then I think he said a couple elements of that got put into Reboot, like, the mentioning of Banner, Bruce, Brody's daughter.
Yeah.
Which I just
Yeah.
love that name. It's like,
Yeah.
of course he would name his daughter Banner.
Yeah.
Just for any, hey, guess what? For last name first name last. Well, okay.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because apparently that as much fun as we had with Strike Back, that it was a not so great shoot for Kevin Smith in terms of Jason Mewes at the time, because Jason Mewes had a really bad heroin problem at the time, and it interfered with a lot of the production. They obviously managed to do a pretty good job that I didn't notice anything bad or anything.
No.
Apparently there's a couple of real quick things here and there where you kind of see Jason on the nod, but
I remember reading in one of his books, I think it was one of the books that like transcribed his blog, like when he had a blog before he started podcasting. He talked about like, oh yeah, we had Jay on Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and he would be having trouble, and we basically like fed him beers to keep him like kind of going that way. I mean, they had to pay for his dental surgery, his first set of dental surgery on this, and he was basically just like, yeah, we kind of just kept Jay off the heroin by giving him beer to kind of keep him there, and then we would like kind of monitor him on set as best we could. And it's like, man, like I'm so glad that Jason Mewes is on, clean, sober, has a family, everything like that, But there it was very touch and go, I guess, for the longest time, and it's scary to think like, man, like Kevin Smith could have lost one of his dearest friends. Jason Mewes would have lost his life. It's just scary to think about. I mean, in all cases like that, when it comes to drugs and alcohol, it's just like you never know. You never know what turn something could take. Like Jason Mewes could have been a cautionary tale, like John Belushi, or Chris Farley,
absolutely.
or whoever.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's great. And part of the reasoning for making Jay and Silent Bob Reboot was to have the same experience, but this time with Jay being clean and sober, and basically redoing the whole adventure again in a way. And that's why it's so similar. Obviously they change a few things up to kind of update it and make it more modern with the times, and updated the girl gang into a into this version of girls that don't have fathers, and to really talk about more of a a father and daughter kind of story that
Yeah, it turns into a family road trip instead of a buddy
Yeah,
road trip.
yeah. And so it's fun because of that. I enjoy Reboot, maybe not as much as Strike Back, but it's still pretty high up there because it's a fun movie. It's great to see Jay and Silent Bob back again doing their stupid shit. And
Yeah, I have a lot
it,
of fun with it, and seeing
yeah.
like again with the celebrity. I mean, seeing a hologram of Chris Hemsworth is one of one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time. It's just like, and Chris Hemsworth, he's one of those guys. He just comes in, he has fun, he doesn't care what
Oh
he's
yeah.
doing. He's like, I'm gonna have a blast. I could be being paid nothing, and I'm still gonna have so much fun. Like,
Oh yeah, definitely. Like that's what I appreciate of Chris Hemsworth is like he's obviously very good with the comedy. And he's choosing projects. Obviously he's choosing, some action stuff that, will pay the bills.
yeah,
But he's also doing stuff on the side, in this and in the most recent vacation movie, and the other Ghostbusters movie. And so, he's doing stuff to stretch those, comedy, as well. And
right.
of course, obviously the last two Thor movies, he's had the chance to do that. So it's always fun to see him in something, especially something as silly and dumb as this.
Yeah.
So
when he's just allowed to be like really over the top and just like, I mean, like
right.
when he hosted SNL, he's just like he had a ton of fun just being very ridiculous. I think it's
exactly. Like... yeah. So this is obviously Kevin Smith had his daughter as one of the stars in Tusk, and well, she was a side character in Tusk, and then one of the stars in Yoga Hosers. But seeing her in this, and all honesty aside, I still haven't watched Tusk and Yoga Hosers. I'm there. It's part of the reason why I'm doing this is to actually finally sit down and watch them.
I'll say Tusk is interesting. It's it's very. Don't go in expecting it to be a serious type movie.
No.
Obviously, don't. Yeah, just go in expecting more of a less horror, more black comedy. I say, don't expect Red State. Like when I saw Red State the first time, I'm like, Jesus, this movie.
Well, that's what's funny is I mentioned it on another episode is that Red State. When I first watched it, I rewatched it again for only the second time I've ever seen it. Because the first time I saw it, because Kevin Smith was view askew mostly, that when we got to Red State, it just was so much of a departure that it was a good movie. I always thought it was a good movie, but it was such a weird departure that it just didn't connect as well for me. And this time while watching it, I could make that distinction a little bit better in my head and just enjoy it for just being the movie that it was. And taking it outside of the Kevin Smith of it all and just going, okay, this is just a really good movie, really fun movie. But yeah, so I still need to watch Tusk and Yoga Hosers, and those are definitely going to be interesting to watch. But seeing Harley Quinn Smith in this one, I'd say she's a decent actress. She's not bad at all.
No, I think she's. I mean, it's definitely
she's got a future ahead of her.
Yeah, she's definitely proven herself in this, and I haven't seen that the show she did on Freeform. I think it was Cruel Summer or something like that. I don't remember that, but I heard she's like amazing in that. So I'm like, okay. She. I mean, it's early, so it was like with Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I think this was like her like second, third movie, something like that. It's like. Everybody, they need time to really become the actor that they are.
Oh yeah, and, for sure.
And it can be a little scary when it's like I'm being directed by my dad.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's funny too is that there's mentions of that too. It's like, oh, it's that guy who's always putting his daughter and everything, and it's it's a
skinny guy. He's lost.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I think is fun about Reboot too is it's not just it's fully and both of these movies they're fully referential about not only the movies themselves, the Viewisk universe themselves, the characters and everything. They're meta textual about movies in general and about his own life and inserting a lot of that into it. And I know he went into Reboot partially as a, he wanted to, it was about, he didn't have a, that disconnect with his daughter. I mean, obviously his daughter grew up with him and everything, but, he also wanted to have that, have a movie about fathers and daughters and, that connection and I found it interesting too that the little girl who plays Ben Affleck's daughter in Reboot is actually Jason Mewes' daughter. So, it's nice to have that whole family just being around and stuff. So,
and you can kind of see in her performance that it's just like obviously she's just a toddler, but she's still like reacting mostly to Jason Mewes because Jason Mewes is like, yep, I'm your dad. I mean, you're focused on me right now. I know. It's
there's a little part where he sticks out his tongue at her and just being kind of playful with her.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cute, especially knowing that. Yeah, I actually found that out later after I watched it, but I thought that interaction was cute.
Yeah, you figured out it's like, oh wow, like it.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
I was just saying, I love that this is the movie that brought Ben Affleck back with Kevin Smith.
Yes.
Like the two of them buried the hatchet of all of whatever happened. Rumors, conjecture, what have you. They realized like, hey, we're friends. We've been friends for years. We can't let something small come between us. And I'm sure Ben Affleck's probably like, I mean, you helped start my career, so I can't really fault you.
Yeah. No, it was great seeing him in it. It was, and it's such a good portion of it talking about like, the role of, fathers and daughters and, and just, generally parents and children and everything. And again, that just goes into just how much heart Kevin Smith puts into his movies is, yes, they can be filled with crass, stupid jokes, about weed and dick and farts and everything, but also be so full of heart that you're tearing up in parts and you're just emotional. And that's what I love about his work that I don't think he gets enough credit for is that people just see him as the really jokey dumb guy, but there's more to these movies than what you think there is.
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, speaking of just getting emotional, I mean, I watched Clerks 2 last year for the first time in a long time. Like I like I said, I saw that 3 times in theaters and like I loved it so much and it really resonated with me at the time. And now that I'm older, like when I see that scene when Randall and Dante are in the jail cell and he's just like I really have to say it? Like, I love you, man. You're my best friend. And it's just like that moment just like really hit me in a spot where I was like I'm gonna start crying right now and watching this movie. Like I've been laughing for almost the entirety of it, and now I'm just gonna turn into a bawling mess. Like, and it's just amazing he can do that and just turn it on a dime like that, especially where it's just you can feel the change coming when it's like more of the emotional beats, but it doesn't. It's like you're still affected by it so much. Like when in Chasing Amy too, like when Alyssa is telling Holden like I'm not going to be your whore, and like she just storms out, and it's just like you feel that like really hard in your heart, and it's like it's so well done. And it's like I agree, Kevin Smith deserves way more credit as being like somebody who can really handle emotions better than just like, oh, he's a comedy guy, he's this and that, Well,
I think that's what makes his movies, like I think that's what makes his movies so good, and I wish they were more popular and more successful, is because he's layering so many things together that it's dismissed a lot because of the crassness of his jokes and everything. But he's doing stuff that, for me, most dramas don't even make me like feel much because they're intentionally trying to pull on those heartstrings, and you can see it a little too much. And so I'm like, okay, I don't care, and you don't end up caring for the characters as much. But with Kevin Smith, you're enjoying the ride, you're having fun, you're getting invested in the characters, and then he pulls on those heartstrings, and you're just like, oh my god, dude, stop devastating me. And especially the older I get, and that's what's interesting too. The older that I get, and the older that he's gotten too, and had family and stuff. His kid's an adult, my kids are adults and stuff like that. So it's like this interesting dynamic of having, because when Clerks came out, Clerks was 94. So I was 20 when that came out. So I was already an adult. And so I've kind of grown along with him as an adult, and had the kids around the same time period and stuff. And so seeing that, watching these movies as it goes along, and all that, just it's interesting how much they affect me, because you see him growing up as well, growing as a parent and growing as a filmmaker and all that. So it's interesting to have that affect me so much as well. So
and it's especially interesting how, like you said, he's been written off so much with movies like Reboot and other stuff, where it's just like he's just he's letting whatever happens, like he's letting his fancy, he's having a flights of fancy, doing whatever he wants. Right. It's like he is to a degree, but he is also telling really interesting stories that he wants to tell, and involving his family and friends and as much as he wants to. And because I was watching Reboot with my wife, and she was just like, he's one of those guys, he's just never forgotten where he comes from. And it's like, that's really important, and it shows absolutely, especially when he's like, I'm gonna hang out with Walt, and I'm gonna hang out with all the guys from Comic Book Men and the Secret Stash and all that. It's like, he loves his friends, he loves his family, he's a Jersey boy at heart forever.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the funny thing too, is like you don't really, like, I know people like kind of shit on Adam Sandler a lot too. But Adam Sandler has the same kind of thing, where he has a lot of the same people in his movies and his friends and family and everything. And I don't ever hear anybody complain about that. It's a very similar life that he's had too. And he's not the director or writer or any of these, but he's obviously producer in a way, because he's getting to have all these people in them. But right. You don't hear people really complain about that aspect of Adam Sandler's movies. You hear they're stupid and dumb, and I disagree. I feel like they're the same kind of thing in a lot of ways. Yeah. They're just fun, goofy, dumb movies. But Kevin Smith seems to always kind of get that detraction, is that people are always like, oh, he's always got the same people in his movies, he's always putting his family. Who cares? Like, he's got some great actors. I mean, Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Chris Rock, all the people who come into these movies, it's and him himself. I was talking to another person about this, and Kevin Smith writes himself off as a good actor when he's actually a really, really good actor, especially when he plays as Silent Bob and has to basically just like act and react with his face.
Yes.
And so, being able to do that and being able to get it across, I think it was funny too, because now we're in the smartphone era, that it became a thing in Reboot, where he would have to type on the phone a lot, especially for just a dumb emoji. And so it's funny that became an aspect of the Silent Bob persona,
the new iteration along the way of Silent Bob.
So, but I do think
that'll be in Clerks 3.
Yeah, maybe. I'm excited to see Clerks 3. It looks fun. I'm glad to see that Jeff Anderson has come back. I know that he's every time he's super resistant to coming back. And
I know that there's a lot of behind the scenes drama, or was a lot of behind the scenes drama with that. And it's I'm glad once again, they've taken the steps they need to, and they've fixed that problem again for now.
Well, I think that's what going back to that, I think that's interesting that when Kevin Smith does have those issues with people like Ben Affleck or Jeff Anderson, or even like with Bruce Willis in Cop Out, they obviously had a very bad relationship after that movie. And he's gone back since then and has and he badmouthed Bruce Willis a lot.
I remember those. Yeah.
And 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 I mean, it seems like they were kind of both right in that instance, because Kevin Smith was really hitting the weed hard back then. And
Yeah.
so that I do think that was causing a little bit, not, I wouldn't say a
There's
lot,
some
but just,
strife, I'd say.
it was
Yeah,
just some strife between them specifically. And so it it was nice to see him recently, kind of try to bury the hatchet, and and move on from that. And it seems like he does that with all of the people that he's ever had issues with. He seems to try to resolve it in a way. I know that he had after their breakup, him and Joey Lauren Adams had issues for a while, but then of course obviously she's come back several times and has been in his movies,
and
and
back
so
in Reboot.
yeah, so it's nice to see that he can repair that, and that's great, as not only as a filmmaker but as a person, that you can put whatever differences aside and try to resolve it in a way that makes everybody happy.
Yes, absolutely. He seems very much like he's the peacekeeper. He always wants to try and make sure everybody's happy and everybody is content. Because I think the Jeff Anderson stuff, a lot of that was mostly money, and that's a lot of the studio issues and things like that. And I think Kevin Smith always was like, I want to try and get everybody the money they deserve and things like that. So I think with this, with Clerks 3, I think it finally has worked out, especially now that they're doing the road shows and things like that, and the podcast and everything like that, that it'll help kind of allow Jeff Anderson to be, to get what he's deserved since the beginning, really, and I hope Brian O'Halloran too, he gets everything he does. Like, I hope everybody gets the happiness that they deserve, because they've all worked so hard for it, and it's, they deserve happiness.
I mean, we're coming up on 30 years since Clerks first came out. So it's, they've been, part of the View Askew universe since the very beginning. So both of them, especially, were integral to, everything that came afterward. So it's nice to see them come back again. And, hopefully we'll get lots of people going to these road shows. It seems like they're filling up easily. Tickets are selling out and everything.
My friend and I had planned on going, but I'm just like, I don't have the time from work and things like that. It's so hard, but who knows? Hopefully this will lead to a reboot of Clerks animated series. I'd really like that.
That would be pretty good. Yeah. That'd be
maybe
fun
Hulu.
again.
Hulu, are you listening? You guys pick up a lot of interesting stuff.
Hulu, Netflix, somebody, come on.
Not an HBO Max, no. They would bring it on and cancel it in a season, and not pay Kevin
with
Smith
Netflix, but I think Netflix might, and you never know.
Well, yeah, Netflix I think would have a little bit. I mean, I guess they just renewed. They renewed an animated show. I forget what it's called now, but it was like on the bubble for so long, and everybody's like, they're gonna cancel it, and then it's like, no, we brought it back, and it's like, hooray!
That's weird it's weird with Netflix and the animated series. They seem to hold on to those a little bit more, especially if they can get a good 5 seasons out of them. Although they pack those 5 seasons into like 3 years, so it's a little funny the way they do that.
Well, it's money. They hold off that money. They're like, we're gonna milk Stranger Things as much as possible, so we're
oh man.
We got that spinoff.
Was there anything you wanted to specifically mention about either one of these movies?
Not particularly, other than going back to the Clerks animated series. It feels like, I mean, the heart of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back feels so rooted in and the anime, because the animated series was before Strike Back, or was that after?
I want to say it was slightly before. Yeah,
I was going to say, because it feels like, I think Kevin Smith was probably like, I'm going to throw some ideas that I had for the cartoon into the movie, and because like I said, they gave him the world essentially. They're like, Kevin, you promise this is the last View Askew movie, right? He's like, I swear, has his fingers crossed behind his back and everything. He's like, it's the end.
I think he even thought so too, because the way he talked about it back then was he kind of wanted to move on from that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he he went back to, because then he did Jersey Girl and Zack and Miri, and then came back to do Clerks 2 because he was just like, okay, obviously those two didn't work. Let me try to go back to what worked.
I remember him saying Clerks 2 was kind of a present to Jay, because Jay stayed sober for like 5 years, I think, and it was like, this is for Jay. Jay wanted this. He loves, Jason Mewes loves playing Jay, so I want to give him the gift of playing Jay again, essentially. And it's like, and he made probably one of my absolute favorites, which was Clerks 2, and it just it hits my heartstrings every time now that I'm old. That I myself am older, not old, but older. But he, just I think with Jay and Silent Bob, it was a lot of just like, I'm gonna tell the story I want to tell. Damn the consequences. I've worked my way to this. Like Dogma, I think Dogma was kind of his test run of like, what can I get away with on screen? Like, okay, giant shit monster, got it. All right. Angels, having their heads explode at the sound of God's voice, like Alan Rickman doing tequila and then spinning tequila into back into another glass, like everything. He's just like, and then he's like, let me go a step further. Let me get more Stay in the Time. Let me get let me get Judd Nelson, because I've loved The Breakfast Club forever. And John Hughes. So he's like, and they bowed to him. They were like, yes, you have given us so much. We are going to let you do whatever you want. Film on the Mirror.
No, I remember Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back being super huge at the time. Like, I mean, obviously it didn't make a ton of money, but like culturally speaking, it hit pretty big. And it was definitely one of those movies that it kind of feels of its time in a lot of ways. It doesn't really transcend time so much, but it's very much that pocket of the culmination of the 90s in a lot of ways. And a culmination of Kevin Smith up to that point. And so but it was nice to see him go back and do Reboot and kind of go, okay, well, this is how I am now, and this is what Jay and Silent Bob would be like now. So
and exactly, it's literally a reboot. It's just like, this is the new and improved Kevin Smith. I'm lighter. I had a heart attack. I am vegan now. I live a new lifestyle entirely. So I'm this guy now. Like I'm Silent Bob 2.0. And Jay's a dad.
Jay's a dad. Yeah. No, they're both fun movies. I think they make a great complement to each other. It's definitely fun watching them back to back to get that that experience
kind of
seeing young Jay and Silent Bob and older Jay and Silent Bob, because it's separated by 18 years. So I mean, it's at least the timeline matches up for his daughter to be 18 at the time. So
yes, it works out pretty well.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, I've got nothing. It's I mean, these are great movies.
Oh yeah, definitely excellent. If any of you listeners have not watched them, definitely seek them out. I've got nothing else myself. So if you want to plug anything, tell people where they can find you.
Oh, sure. Well, I have my primary Twitter account is actually I have to just double check, because I'm always on the opposite end of this. I tell people where to, like, hey, what do you want to
right?
Okay, I'm on Twitter. I'm at Kevin_U_87. But I also have my podcast has its own Twitter now. I just started that. Podcast is still, I'm only about 10 or so episodes in right now. I have a few on the back burner that I've been trying to get taken care of, but that's a computer issue right now on my end. So I'm trying to fix it. Fingers crossed. But that's at VideoCon Pod. Video Confidential is my podcast. We talk about movies primarily, but also the video store experience as it was, growing up. Like what did you do? Were you a Friday night kind of kid? Like you would go to the video store on Friday with your parents, pick up whatever? Were you a mom and pop shopper? Did you just go whenever you wanted because you just were like, I love movies so much? It's kind of that experience, just talking about like and reliving the experiences of your childhood or your teenhood. Because I pretty much spent every night of my late teens at Blockbuster with my friends because we would just be like, what are we watching tonight? And it's like, well, we're going to the horror section first and we work our way around. But it's kind of just like a love letter is the best way to put it. It's a love letter to the video store experience and the movies that you would rent as a kid and watch, and just kind of like myself with Mallrats. So
yeah
I rented that a ton, and it's it holds all these types of movies hold a special place in my heart.
That's awesome. Yeah, everybody go check that out. All right, well, thanks again. And
well, thanks for having me again. I really appreciate the offer. I'm always happy to guest. So if you ever need a guest on anything, if you need a guest on Red State or not on Tusk or Yoga Hosers, I will jump on board. So.
Well, I got all those locked up, but yeah, I'll definitely keep you in mind for the future.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Thanks again to Kevin for joining me. Next episode, Mix Bell Morgan joins me to talk Jersey Girl and Zach and Mary Make a Porno. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more from our TeePublic page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.